Almost everyone thinks they know Egypt because of the Pyramids of Giza. They are famous in photos and books, but this image hides a territory where time isn't measured by kings, but by the changes of the planet. Beyond the known paths, there is a vast desert spanning 1 million square kilometers. "95% of this place is an absolute void, far from the cities. We are about to enter a land where the ground was once the bottom of a deep sea. There, skeletons of giant sea monsters rest between dunes of hot sand. The real Egypt is not just a tourist trip. It is a battlefield between the force of nature and time that many prefer to ignore. Almost everyone knows only the ancient temples and the gold of the pharaohs. But that is just the frame of a larger painting. The inhospitable Egypt is not found in luxury hotels. There, we learn what true silence is and how ancient life on earth really is. The desert hides secrets from those who pass by in a hurry. It is a place where life transforms. This is the real anatomy of a land that breathes under the weight of the Sahara. It is the Egypt that the dust guards, far from the tourists, a raw landscape that does not fit into photos. This place exists on its own terms. There, silence is not empty. It is a story that began long before humanity arrived. Egypt occupies 1 million square kilometers, but almost all of it is an absolute desert. Imagine a map of the entire Europe, but made only of sand and stone from one end to the other. The great irony is that this extreme dryness protects the past. Without it, the temples would have melted like sugar millennia ago. "110 million people live squeezed into only 5% of the entire territory. Think of the entire population of a giant country living inside a single narrow corridor of land. This crowd depends entirely on a single river, and without it, everyone would be living over a silent cemetery of dust." The real history of this land is not in sight. It is hidden just below the surface where we walk. It is estimated that more than 5,000 ancient cities and monuments are still buried under the Egyptian soil. What we see today works like the tip of a stone iceberg hidden beneath our feet. The scenario gets even stranger when we realize that this vast desert was not always dry. The Sahara was once the bottom of a deep, agitated tropical ocean full of life called the Tethys Sea. Where the dunes burn today, sharks and colorful fish once swam in deep waters. The dust that sticks to your skin now is actually made of billions of seashells crushed by time. If you think the heat is the only challenge, the power of the sun is something beyond comparison in the rest of the world. Egypt receives 4,000 hours of intense light per year, which represents almost double that of any common country. The sky behaves like a cannon of light that never turns off, creating a heat that makes the air itself vibrate. This excessive brightness generates constant mirages, where the eyes see blue lakes where there is only sand and thirst. This raw geography holds holes so deep they defy our imagination. The Qattara Depression sits 133 meters below sea level, forming an abyss in the middle of nowhere. You could hide a 40-story building inside this basin without it surpassing the edge. The impossible that is real. The water at the bottom is 5 times saltier than any common ocean. These are not just legends. There is physical evidence scattered across the sand, showing that the world was once turned upside down. Skeletons of giant whales, 18 meters long, were found in the middle of the dry and isolated desert. Think of an animal larger than an articulated bus resting on top of a scorching sand dune. The revelation that scares people is that these whales had knees and feet. They walked on land before the sea dried up. To deal with such immense sizes, human effort also had to be extraordinary. The temple of Abu Simbel was cut into 1,000 giant blocks of 30 tons to be saved from a flood. Each piece weighed the same as 10 elephants together, requiring logistics that seem like fiction. The precision had to be so absolute that an error of a few millimeters would erase forever the miracle of sunlight on the king's face. In the end, Egypt is the place where the newest life depends on the oldest death to exist. The fertilizer of beings that died millions of years ago sustains those born today on the banks of the Nile. The craziest part is that the desert that tries to drive us away is the same one that kept our history in a perfect vault. All this monumental immensity proves that the facts of this land hide a reality that is hard to believe. After diving into the vastness of this scenario, it is time to set foot on the road. We are going to cross this territory from end to end, following paths that most guides prefer to ignore. Our expedition starts in the far west, where the ground seems made of ice that never melts, and it plunges into the abyss of the east, where the sea guards mysteries that the sunlight gives up on illuminating. To reach the first point of the journey, there are no roads or maps that actually work. To reach the White Desert, you cross 45 kilometers of total emptiness, starting from Farafra. This is a place that few people in the world have had the chance to see. The asphalt ends and the car begins to bounce over a bright land. Here, the solitude is complete. There is no electricity, internet, or phone signal. It is nature in a vast setting that offers no shelter of any kind. The mountains change color, from red to yellow, until they reach a white that shines brightly. Stepping out of the vehicle, you feel the ground breaking under your boots, as if it were chalk. The wind blows cold, and the silence seems to have weight. In the middle of the day, the light is so strong that shadows disappear. Only giant white shapes remain, looking like stone ghosts scattered across the landscape. The ground remains warm, holding the sun's heat even when the air cools down. Many people think these are just curious rocks, but the truth is much deeper. This place was once the bottom of an ocean, and the evidence is everywhere. If we look closely, we find shells and small sea creatures that turn to stone in the middle of the desert. These remains of marine life formed a layer of chalk that, over thousands of years, was shaped by an invisible sculptor, the wind. It is this constant breath that gives the stones the strange shapes we see today, resembling giant mushrooms sprouting from nowhere. Bedouins set up tents at the base of these structures to protect themselves from the wind. They sleep on the ancient sea floor, while telling stories around the campfire. The white desert proves that water once reigned absolutely, where today there is only sand. If in the white desert we saw the silent force of nature, now we will see the Pyramids of Giza, where man decided to defy time absolutely. You must face the edge of the desert, where the limestone shines under the strongest light in the world. Far from the noise of the city, these stone giants show immense resistance. They are not just monuments. They are artificial mountains made with more than 2 million heavy blocks. Each piece of rock used here weighs the same as 2 or 3 elephants combined. The blocks were fitted together with a perfection that still intrigues science today. The heat rising from the ground is intense, and the sun seems to give no rest to those who venture there. The wind blows constantly between the gaps in the stones, bringing dust that tries to hide these millennial works. Many believe they already know this place because of the images, but the feeling of standing at the feet of these giants is impossible to capture. It is a presence that commands respect and shows the strength of an ancient civilization. They knew how to master a hostile geography in a unique way. The pyramids are not just tombs. They are landmarks of a time when Egypt was the center of everything. As the sun sets behind the stone peaks, shadows stretch across the Sahara. They guide us to the deep isolation of our next destination. To reach the Siwa Oasis, it is necessary to cross 800 kilometers of a desert that seems endless. This isolation is so great that the people who live there speak their own language and maintain traditions that do not exist anywhere else in Egypt. In the distance, amidst the golden sand, lakes of a very vivid blue appear, surrounded by thousands of green palm trees. The ground is covered by a white crust of salt that shines under the sun. In these lakes, the water is so heavy with salt that anybody floats in it as if it were a cork, making it impossible to sink. But Siwa holds a curious and sad story. In the center of the oasis, there is an ancient fortress called Shali, built with bricks made of mud and salt crystals. In 1926, a very heavy rain, something rare in the desert, caused the walls of the houses to start melting. What remains are skeletons of buildings that continue to disappear slowly with every new drop of water that falls. Today, the residents use the same salt that destroyed their houses to survive, removing white blocks from the lakes to sell. It is a life that depends on the same material that erases the past. If in Siwa nature shows how salt can both preserve and destroy, the next stop reveals that human will can be even stronger. We go south, where man decided to move entire mountains to ensure that the story of a king would never be erased. Leaving the silence of Siwa, our journey descends to the hottest point in the country. In the far south of Egypt, the heat is so strong that the air seems to burn the skin. There, on the edge of a giant blue lake, 4 enormous statues of an ancient king have watched the horizon for thousands of years. Entering the stone temple, we smell the heat stored in the rock, remembering that man tried to be greater than time. But the secret of Abu Simbel is not just its age. In fact, nothing we see today was in this place originally. In the 60s, the government needed to build an enormous dam to provide energy and water to the people of the country. The problem was that the plan would create an artificial lake so large that the entire temple would be swallowed and disappear from the map. To prevent history from drowning, 50 countries joined in a mission that at the time seemed impossible. They decided to do something incredible: move the entire temple, like a giant puzzle of monumental immensity. They cut the mountain and the walls into more than 1,000 heavy stone blocks, each weighing as much as several trucks. They numbered each piece carefully under the unbearable sun so that nothing would be lost in the middle of the sand. It took 4 years of hard work and a lot of patience to carry and reassemble everything in a higher and safer spot. Modern engineers were so precise that they managed to maintain even the secret of light that the ancient architects planned. Twice a year, on the exact day, the sun's rays pierce the darkness and illuminate the face of the king's statue deep inside. If they were off by a single finger, the sunlight would never reach that secret and special place again. Today, Abu Simbel celebrates this victory of human intelligence. while our final stop takes us straight into the deep darkness. Leaving behind the light of Abu Simbel, we reach the eastern coast of Egypt. There, the red stone mountains dive straight into the sea. To reach the Dahab Blue Hole, you travel along a narrow road squeezed between sharp cliffs and ocean waves. Seen from above, the place looks like a hand-painted picture. It is a perfect, very dark blue circle in the middle of the colorful corals. This image transmits great peace. But this calm hides one of nature's most dangerous traps. The greatest danger of the Blue Hole is its incredible transparency. The water is so crystalline that you cannot tell where the shallow part ends and the abyss begins. Under this peaceful mirror, there is a hole that drops straight down for 130 meters. Divers are drawn by the hypnotic beauty of this infinite blue and end up descending much deeper than the human body can handle. In these depths, the pressure deceives the senses and confuses the mind. What should be a tour becomes a path of no return for many. On the rocks surrounding this blue circle, the silence is interrupted by something very serious. There are dozens of marble plaques engraved in the stone with names of people. They are tributes to those who dove into these waters and never managed to return to the surface. Today, even professionals enter there with a respect that borders on fear. They know that in that silent abyss, nature does not accept mistakes. Ignoring the limits of your own body comes at a high price. This contrast between extreme beauty and real danger is the final lesson. We have passed the white towers and the bones of whales that once walked upon the sand. We traveled from the south, where man saved temples from the rising waters, to the sea that guards dangerous mysteries. After so many paths, we realize that Egypt is impossible to explain through images alone. It is a blend of curious facts that show how the planet's time is immense compared to our own. Here, the sea and the desert trade places over millions of years. The sand that now covers these temples was once the floor of an ocean teeming with life. But while Egypt is a stone giant teaching us about what we once were, there is another giant, one of abyss and fire, that sustains what we are today. In the heart of the African continent, a river that swallows buildings and a jungle hiding the engine of global technology await us. If you think the desert is silent, wait until we cross the border into the Congo, where the mystery is even deeper. I'll see you there.